or his followers blowing the ram's horn in worship. This is not some form of devil worship. It is symbolic of the age of Aries. The previous age was Taurus, the bull. This is the bull, or rather the age, which the Moses character was leading his people away from. This age of the ram ended with the slaughter of the ram when Father Abraham, the father of Christianity, slaughtered a ram instead of his son. Just as Mithra kills the bull to usher in the age of the ram, Abraham kills the ram of Aries to usher in the next age, the age of Pisces. Jesus takes us out of the age of Aries into the age of Pisces. And what was his first miracle? He turns regular water into wine and feeds the masses with 2 fish. These represent the 2 fish of Pisces. Jesus was the fisher of men. Christians today often put a fish symbol on the back of their car or on their clothes. The Pope's mitre is a fish head, looking exactly like the fish heads, representing the age of Pisces, the age of Christianity, the age of the fish.
So even the clergy reflect this age. But the symbol of the fish comes from the Vesca Piscis, or the Vesca Pisces. And the Vesica is a symbol of the spiritual portal which emerges from the harmonious balance of 2 complementary polarities: intuition and intellect, knowledge and practice, yin and yang, the heaven and the earth, spirit and science. It's 2 complementary polarities that create this spiritual portal. If you consider its shape, it is a spiritual portal. It is the shape of the yoni. We must have this spiritual portal in order to exist. The only way for us to enter into this dimension is through this portal, which emerges from the harmonious balance of 2 complementary polarities, male and female, as we enter into this dimension through this spiritual portal. Our Lady of Guadalupe is often seen standing inside this symbol of the Vesica. Pagan traditions will have people being drawn through this symbol, physically drawn through this symbol, as they are said to have been born again, born into this cult or into this family. So just to bring a close to the talk of ages and becoming to the end of an age, in Matthew 28:20, Jesus says that I am with you always, to the very end of the age. So when the age ends, well, I'm with you always to the end of the age. So there is an age to come. Luke tells us that there is an age to come. In the age and in the world which are to come. So if Jesus is with us until the end of the age, and this age is about to end, is this reflected in the Bible? And it is. As Jesus is about to be crucified, the end of Jesus in the Bible, as Jesus is about to be crucified, he is going to have his last meal, or the Last Supper. And the day came of the unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. And Jesus sent Peter and John saying, go make preparations for us to eat the Passover. This is the Last Supper. And they replied saying, where do you want us to prepare for it? Where are we going to prepare this last meal for you? And Jesus said to them, behold, when you enter into the city, a man shall meet you bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house that he entereth in. And symbolically, this is stating you will recognize the new age by a man bearing a pitcher of water. And you will follow him into the house. And houses are the houses of the zodiac. So this house is represented by a man bearing a pitcher of water, and that's exactly what the age of Aquarius is the man with the water pitcher. You don't see men in history bearing water. You see the woman fetching the water, the woman at the well, the women with the water pot on their head. So a man carrying the water pot is symbolic. It's symbolic of perhaps a slow return to egalitarianism. Abraham was going to stab his son, but instead he ends up stabbing the ram. Just as Mithra was stabbing the bull and Jesus was stabbed on the cross. When Jesus was stabbed on the cross, his blood was collected in a cup. This cup has been a long sought-after treasure for many people, all throughout the ages. And we're going to talk about this cup. We're going to talk about the body and the blood now. And this is a good segue into communion, where Christians will participate in a ritual, a blood-drinking ritual, a mock blood-drinking and flesh-eating ritual. And this is why they do this, is because of the verse in the Bible. And as they were eating it, Jesus took bread and he blessed it. And he broke it and he gave it to his disciples and said, "Take and eat. This is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them and said, "Drink of it, all of you. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." And it is a bit strange that people continue these rituals today without really knowing the origin of just exactly where these things come from. This can cross the line into offensive territory, but this is forewarned in the Bible, because the Jews began to argue sharply amongst themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" And Jesus said to them, "I tell you the truth, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in him." And upon hearing this, many of his disciples said, "This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it?" And aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, "Does this offend you? The physical body and the blood part, that's the symbolic part. But before we can get into this, we need to understand the Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of ancient writings containing nearly all of the Old Testament. They were discovered in caves near the Dead Sea in Qumran from 1947 into the mid-1950s. This caused immense anticipation from Christians everywhere, as the scrolls were thought to be a guarantee for the church to prove Christianity correct. It appeared as though the only thing left to do was to read and interpret the scrolls, and Christians would have all the proof they needed. This was because the Dead Sea Scrolls were written in the Semitic language of Aramaic between 250 BCE and 136 CE. This was the era that the Jesus character was said to be walking the earth. To find scrolls written in his language during the period of time in which he was said to be living was a major finding, and Christians everywhere were excited about this. So, what did the scrolls say? Did they read like newspaper headlines speaking of a Jesus of Nazareth? These were questions that had to be answered. Consequently, the best of the best were called upon by the church for their translation skills. John Marco Allegro was a researcher in philology who had graduated with a first-class honors degree in Oriental Studies from the University of Manchester. He had earlier begun training for the Methodist ministry, but had left to pursue the degree course when he found that studying biblical languages was making him question the foundations of his Christian belief. While working toward a doctorate at Oxford, he was invited to join the original scrolls editing team in 1953. In 1954, he became an assistant lecturer at Manchester and considered an up-and-coming philologist in regards to Middle Eastern and Mediterranean languages. Allegro was the only agnostic on the international team of Dead Sea Scrolls translators. Most of the other members of this so-called International Scrolls team were ordained Catholic priests.